Thank you for joining us on the channel's book club. Poetry is the mother tongue of the human race. That's according to Johann Hamann, an 18th century German philosopher. Today's episode is mainly about poetry. It's a genre that demands the most imaginative and artistic literary creations. To get us started is a fascinating young man whose voice you may have heard on radio. His name is Rufai Oseni. He's a popular broadcaster with one of Nigeria's leading radio stations. He's a voiceover artist, actor, and master of ceremonies. Most interestingly for us here, Rufai is a poet and has written hundreds of poems addressing many aspects of life. He spoke to us about his keen interest in poetry, favorite books, and writing. Enjoy the interview. Tell me about your poetry. How much do you write? How many have you written? How regularly do you write?
A lot. I write at every point in time. I get the inspiration. After time, 3 or 4 times a day sometimes.
3 or 4 times.
You know, because you're trying to piece everything together. As you get the inspiration you want to write, you could be on a trip at some point in time, and something just strikes you. And you put pen to paper and write. And I've been doing this for almost all my life because that's the only way I speak to myself. You might not trust people so much to be able to tell them these ideas you have or what you feel, but you can trust poetry to always listen. When you get the biro and the paper, or you're tapping on your phone and writing it down as it comes to you. And definitely you can also go back to it and read it, and it forms a source of inspiration for you. So poetry has pretty much been my life, and I keep writing every time I get a chance to. If I'm to put a count on it, I cannot say specifically, but it should be going to its thousands or hundreds, really.
Poetry seems so powerful when you think about the art of poetry, when you think about the messages poetry convey. Do you think we appreciate poetry enough in this part of the world, in Nigeria and Africa generally?
I think there's interest. The problem is it's not mainstream yet. We've not brought it to the fore the way we ought to have it. But there's interest. Life itself is just a big poem, if you think of it. It's just a big poem. Everything you do every single day is poetry. The way the bus conductors shout, "Aege," there's an art to it. They could have called it agege, but they say "Aege." The way people talk to one another, the words they use, their gesturing, everything is poetry. But it's not mainstream, it's not put in a book, but it's exciting when you see it. Lagos is that big poetry. It's that big hub for poetry every single day. The traffic situation, go to Oshodi, 8 o'clock in the morning. When there's traffic everywhere, you will know the poetry that goes on there. Sometimes hurling abusive words and things like that, everything is poetry. So it is a part of us. Every Nigerian wants to dramatize and say, "Shebi, you could see what he said," or "you see what she said." But it's not mainstream yet. And that's why we have to learn to take it to the very next level. How to make it mainstream, how to make it part of our lives, and inculcate that reading culture that is fast going away.
So who are your favorite poets? Which are your favorite poetry books?
A lot of them. One that inspires me very greatly is a Chilean poet called Pablo Neruda. Had great works on love. Tagore inspires me a lot. Tagore was the man that started calling Mahatma Gandhi Mahatma, the enlightened one. Rudyard Kipling inspires me a lot. He wrote a very inspiring poem called If. And like I said before, poetry is something I go to when I'm feeling all down, and when everything is turning against me sometimes, and I read If. Very powerful words of the poem If. He said something very precise in that poem. He said, if the world is turning against you, and you can remain calm, and you give them allowance for blaming everything on you, then you're ready to become a man. So words like that keep me going. And all the very amazing poets. Brendan Connolly is another one, an Irish poet. I have this thing for Irish poets. Brendan Connolly said something very profound. He said, if you want to serve your age, you must learn to betray it. It was an Irish poet that said it. And some other wonderful poets all around the world. In Nigeria, great poets. Wole Soyinka, we cannot forget Wole Soyinka, the great works he's done for art. You know, Ibadan is still always at it. Because I stayed in Ibadan at some point in time. And anytime I come into Ibadan, that poem, Ibadan just comes to my mind. You know, and you have J.P. Clark and the likes of all the wonderful poets we have in Nigeria. I think it's just that rich cultural mingling that has come together in my case. Both foreigners and local poets, the likes of W.B. Yeats, right, another Irish poet that wrote Things Fall Apart that Chinua Achebe latched onto. So it is a combination for me. And these people, I thank God for the gifts of their lives because it keeps inspiring everybody day by day.